I guess I don't. So we can proceed with today's class. All right, so before proceeding to today's class, I'll just have a recap on what we did in the last class. What we did in the last class. Can everyone see my screen? All right. In our last class, I introduced us to Node.js. I explained to us how we can create a Node.js project by creating a JavaScript file in your root directory using the HTTP module. You're requiring the HTTP module, which is a protocol module with the Node.js library, and then creating your server with the HTTP object. So inside your server, you can check for the URL of each of the endpoints coming in and handle the request accordingly. You can listen to the URL and check for the request method and handle it accordingly. Also, I mentioned that you can turn JSON as the response of the request rather. Also, I explained to us how we can start our server. Okay, in the last class, I also told us about Node.js, how you can make your server restart whenever you make a change in your application, and I told us how we can start our server with Node.mon by saying Node.mon server.js, which is what we have here. And if you don't forget, we have our Postman collection here where we did some updates. With this endpoint, this is a get endpoint to the boot. This is a get endpoint. The get request rather to the boot endpoint. So sending this request to give us the boot. And also this is a create book endpoint, which is a post request. This is supposed to be a post request to create book. So what I'm going to do, yes, just a post request. I'm not sending this out. So all this we do is to create a book in our backend by just appending the book or adding the book to the array of books that we already have, which is what we have here. So books.push is adding to the list of books we have. Right. So coming back to this get books, I should be seeing 4 books now. And yes, we now have 4 books. Also, in our last class, I talked about HTTP request types and the response. Yes, HTTP request methods and the response. I talked about the post request. Which is always used to create a resource. I talked about the get, so getting things from the server. I talked about the tools, which is what you use to what you use to replace the entire resource or create it if it doesn't exist. I talked about the patch request is what you use to update an existing record. delete request is what you use to delete an existing record. An options request is what you use to get the available methods accepted on the server. Those are the methods most likely to use. And then I talked about response status code. I said 200 the 200 series are successful responses. I said the 300 series are the redirection responses. The 400 are client errors. Client errors means errors that are triggered by client action. And then 500 errors, that's the 500 series, are server errors, which means these are internal errors that you are not supposed to show to the users. Do we get that? Are we still all on the same page? Oh, good. So today we'll be moving forward to Next.js. Today we'll be moving forward to Next.js. And what is Next.js? Next.js is a framework, is a Node.js framework. And when I say a framework, it is let me call it a module that is built on top of Node.js. So that people trying to build backend on top of Node.js will see things, they will have access to things that other people are using. More like a wrapper, whereby you don't have to write some codes by yourself. You just have to depend on what is inside the module, which is the Express module. It is fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. So if you are trying to build a backend on Node.js, you most likely want to use Express. And how do we use Express? Don't forget, I mentioned in our last class, this is an empty folder. In our last class, we create a file, our entry point, which is today I'm using index.js. Index.js. And don't forget, I also told you to initialize a Node.js project, you would have to run npm init. Right. So today I don't want this npm init to be asking me the name of the project, the description, and so on. So just use the default value for everything. I'll use the flag y. So I'll use the flag y. And this will create the packages.json file with all the basic configuration. So here we have the name of the project is Node Express, and this is actually the name of my folder. Version is 1.0. Main, this is the entry point, is index.js. I have a default script here. I have keywords, author, license, and description. We are not changing that yet. So what we have here is just the index.html, just the index.js file and the packages.json. So what do we want to do? We want to install Express. And how do we do that? We have this here. Let me just come to installation. Getting started installing. And then we run this. What we want to do is to install Express, which is npm install Express. If you don't forget, I talked about how to install packages. It's npm in our last class. So what we are doing here is npm install Express. Adebowale, you said, can the presentation be showing only the VS Code screen only? Yes, it can be showing that, but I think it is good if you guys can be seeing other things like the documentation and the Postman, because we're working with Postman as well. So everything you'll be seeing on my screen are things we'll be working with. All right, so I think our Express is installed. Yes, our Express is installed. And how do we proceed from here? let's go to the next documentation. We have the express require and creating an app. So what we are doing here is to say constant express, just like we did for HTTP. Say constant express towards require express. So now we have the express variable, and then we want to create our app. We are going to come just like we have the documentation. Constant app is express. All right, constant app is express. Also, now we have our app. We want to define our ports. What ports are we listening to? We want to say that port is what 3000. Constant port is 3000. So what are we doing? We want to, just like we have here. Let me open this our previous projects. Just like we have here, somewhere here. Okay, we don't have that. Yes, we do. So just like we have here, where we are returning the index page, what we are going to do is to say what we are going to do is to say our app, which is the app we created here, should listen to a get request, and then so this get method is going to receive two arguments. One is the endpoint. Let me show you that. I guess we'll come back to it. One is the endpoint, which is the index endpoint, and the second one is a callback. Right? The second one is a callback. And this callback will have access to the requests and the response. Are you getting me? So what we can do here is to say response.send hello world. Right. So let me start our server now. I'm going to say node.mon index.js. All right, so I'm not listening to the events on the server. So what I'm going to do is to say app.listen. If you can remember, in our last class, we had that somewhere here, server.listen to the port. So we are doing the same thing here, but this time around, we are using our app. So we are saying app.listen to the port, and then this will also receive a callback. Inside our callback, we want to say console.log server listening to port. Then we can add our port to port. So let me see. All right, so I'm getting an error. Somewhere here, and it's saying address already in use. Like I said, Linguid the other time, you can't use the same port for different applications. So what I'm going to do is to terminate the one we already have in this our previous one, the one running in this our previous class, previous project, and then I can just save and so start. Yes, server listening to port 3000. So if I come to our Postman, let me just come here, create a new request, and just this place, send. You can see I have hello world. Let me also bring this to my browser. Let me also bring this to my browser. You can see I also have hello world here, which is our index route. So let's come back to our documentation. Now we've created a simple hello world project with Express. Very similar to what we did in the last class. If you remember in our last class, what we were doing is checking for the was checking for each request. If request is this, you want to do this. If request URL is this, you want to do that. Or in Next.js, in Express.js rather, sorry. In Express.js, we can use this short form to do that. So our app should listen to a get method, a get request rather. Yes, a get method of this endpoint and call this callback for it. I hope you understand that. So what we'll be doing here is to do the same thing, replicate the same thing we did in our last class, which was this book. If I come here, if I try to create a book, or let me try getting books. It's saying cannot get books. Let me bring this to my browser so you can see it well. Oops. You can see I have cannot get books. Now, what's happening here is that Express.js is already handling the error for us, which is when we do not implement this request for this endpoint. When we do not implement the get request for this book endpoint, it should just return cannot get book. So these are one of the benefits we enjoy when using Express.js. So back to our code base, what we want to do is to duplicate what we did in our previous class. Let me just bring this outside here. So if you can remember, what we did, the first thing we did was the first thing in our logic was to create books, an array of books. Here we have 3 books, right? And then what do we want to do again? We want to say so instead of listening to each request, we want to say app.get books. Also, this should accept a callback, and the callback will receive the request and the response. So inside this callback, what are we doing? I think what we are doing is say response.send books, if I'm correct. Then I'll come here and load. And as you can see, we have our books, which is an array. Yes, as you can see, we have our books. We have our books. If I come here, if I'm checking the content type, which is in the header, I'm already seeing that Express has already added the content type to my header. So instead of us adding it manually just like we did in our last class, Express is already adding that for us. Are you getting this? So now we have our books. Also, if we want to create a new book, just like we did in our last class, we want to say app.post, right? Books. Again, this is the standard. Just the same endpoints to create and to get. Again, what we are doing is to say, so let me just use the short form request and response. Right. And what are we doing? Just like we did in our last class. we want to define a book and then add the book we just created to the array of books. And what we want to do is to say, constant response is an array, and this array is an object rather, not an array. It's an object, and this object will have an attribute of message, which is successfully created, right? And then the book which we just created. Also, for the standard practice, we may want to add success is true. So the person calling this endpoint can make rest was successful. So what are we doing? We are saying response.send our response. So we are saying rest. This is rest here. Rest.send our response. So if I come back to my API, my Postman, and click on the create book, which is this post request to this book's endpoint, you can see now I have success is true, message is book successfully created, and also we have the book. So this standard practice is meant to be like this. So your API structure should have the success or the status, the message, and then the data. So inside the data, you can now have the books, which is the book we created. Yes, so if I come here and send this request again, I should have my book. So inside the data, you can have access to the actual book that is created. And also in our get endpoint, what we want to do is to just create a response just like this. And then here again books. Here I say books. So here we are sending the response. Because we are having two responses, we have one response here and they are having another response. So we can just change this to rest response and then change this as well to response. So if I come back to my Postman and I'm getting books, you can see I have success is true, message is books retrieved, and there's one. And then inside my data, I have the books that I'm returning. We all understand that. We all understand that. Nobody's responding. All right. All right. So let's do another thing. Let's do something else. Okay, so someone asked the question the other time. He said, the way we created if else statements the other day, is that standard practice? No, it is not the standard practice. And even this one that we did here is also not the standard practice. So what we'll be doing is to create controllers. So this controller is what we handle requests for each aspect of our system. So what we want to do first is to create routes. So let's come to our project directory as our root directory and create a folder called routes. And as you can see here, we have book here. So we are creating books routes. We are creating book routes. CRUD.js, right? And what is a route file? This is routes are basically where you want each request coming to your system to go through. Are you getting it? Each request, if a request is coming to it should be handled by this callback. If it's coming to a books also as a post request, it should be handled by this callback. So it is in your route. It is in your route file that you define this update, that you make this update. So in our route file, what are we putting there? Again, what we want to do here is to import Express. So we want to say Express as well. Require Express, right? And after requiring Express, we want to say constant router is what? Express.router. So this will create a new router for us. It's a constant, right? And then we want to say, what we just want to do is to bring two guys. So let's go. Bring this one first. Bring it here. And then bring this one, the second one. Bring it here. Bring it here. Yes. So what we want to do is to say our router should listen to get requests for this endpoint, and also our router again should listen to post requests for this endpoint. I hope I'm communicating. So now that we have our book routes, what we are going to do is to import the book route. So I'm saying user and constant book routes is what require, and I can be able to access it here. It's inside routes folder, book routes. Yes. So what this means is that I have, okay, so I'm going to export my module. I'm going to export the router module from here. So I'm going to say module.export router. So it is telling our system, it is telling any file that wants to use this is that this is a separate module I'm handling routes for books. So now that I've imported my module here, what I want to do is to come to somewhere here. Is to come to somewhere here and say API.use. Sorry, I mean app.use. App.use. So what this is going, what is going to happen here is that when you see a request that is coming to the API route, or let's just say users, sorry, books, that is coming to the books route, you should use the books route. Are you getting me? If you see any request coming to the books route, you should use the books route. So let me come here. I think this should give us an error. It should give us a 404 error. Cannot get books. Why? Is because we are already listening to books route here and also listening to books route here, which means we are expected to have something like this books, right? If I add books to my Postman again, come in here, add books, the request should go. Okay, I'm getting an error, which is books not defined. So I'm bringing my books. Where's that? Where's those books? My books, this ones. I'm bringing them here because this is actually where I'm using them. Where I'm using it rather. So yes. So let me come back here and send the request. And now we have our books again. But here we don't want to be getting books. We want to listen for the book endpoint once. So we are listening for it here. We don't need to listen for it here again. So all we can just do is to say listen to the index route, and this one too should listen to the index route. So here we are telling this file that use wherever you see a request coming in with this endpoint, you should use this route. And then inside this route, it is now checking. It is not checking for the next part of that route of the endpoint. So let's say I have books. I I have all, right? Because I'm already listening to books here outside this file. This file will be listening to this other part. It will be checking for this other part. So now that I've removed books from here, I've changed it to the index route. It means that this will listen to something like this. Yes. And in programming, this actually means this. So this / is not always there. So yes, if I come back here, I should send this. I should have a 404 request, 404 not found. But if I remove rules, I should have everything still working. And again, if I come here, create me, successfully created. Come here again, we have the fourth group here. Am I making sense at all? All right. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is controllers. Controllers. Your business logic, your business logic, yes, are not supposed to be in your route file. Just like I said, the main purpose of the route file is to tell the system that, okay, when you see a request coming to this endpoint, you should make use of this callback of this function, right? Just like we have the boot route, what we want to do is to say we want to have controllers as well. So I'm creating another folder called controllers in my root directory, and what I'm doing is to create another file inside the controller and say boot controller. Boot controller. Yeah, boot controller.js. That's a JavaScript file. So what are we going to do? Here we create, first of all, we want to bring our books outside this place, outside our route file, and put it here, yes. And then we want to say constant get page. This will create, okay, this is meant to be a function, just like we have here. Let me just carry the function from here. Or let me just copy the function from here. Yes. So there I have my book controller, and I have my getBook endpoint. My getBook callback rather function. It is a function, and it is an arrow function. So I have my getBook function. And inside the function, what I can do, just like I copied from here, I have access to the request to the response. Because it is a controller method, it is a controller function, it will have access to the request and the response. So again, we are still doing the same thing we are doing with it here. And also here, we have to copy this and say where it's constant create break. Is this function I copy. Are we connected? So what I want to do, just like I did in this route, I want to export my function. So what I'll do is to say, maybe that export is an object, and inside the object I have the get print. I have the create book. I hope I'm communicating. Are we all still connected? All right, good. So now that we have the controller and we are exporting our functions, what we can do here is to require controller. So let's just come here and see constant controller is what require. So when you say you require, you want to put this in parentheses, and then I'm saying you want to go out of this route directory. To go out of the directory, you have to use 2 dots /. You can see my ID is already suggesting to me controllers /book controller. So what this is saying that go out of this folder that you are, which is this route folder, look for controllers, and then look for book controllers. So what we are going to do here is to say, so for this index route, we want to return our book. So we can say controller.get books. And again, for this post, we want to create book. So we can say controller.create book. So this is our route 5. Very short, readable, and precise. Right. So let me come back to our Postman. Send the request. Everything should still be working. We have 3 books here. Create book. We have our book is successfully created. Come back and get the books again. We have the 4th book here. Are we all still connected? All right. So I hope we got it all to this extent. Are we all on the same page? Okay, Sheyi, you have something you want to say. Sheyi?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
All right, I have a question concerning the routes. I understand how the book controller. I'm not sure because it's new information to me. Because the book controller is like where you are keeping all the functions to be called from the routes. That you can access the functions that you made in the book in the controller from the book routes to simplify the project. But what I don't understand is the router being accessed in the index.js file directly. How do you make sure that the requests made are going directly to that route? That
Can you see this?
okay?
So I'm saying app.use. So this thing here, this first parameter, first argument is saying that when you see this endpoint, this is the route you use.
Oh,
Are you getting that?
yeah, it's clear.
Let me comment. Let me comment here. Okay. So that's that about book. Let's change this to our server is running. Yes. Our server is running. All right. So what we want to do now is to. So the way we are creating our book here is that it is hard coded, right? It is hard coded. We don't want it hard coded. We want to be able to send. We want to be able to send it from our Postman. I mean the data of the book, which is the name, the author. Yes, the name and the author. So that is what we'll be doing now. And how do we go about that? How do we go about that? We have to access body data. That's the body of our requests. And how do we access that? We want to say, all right, so how do we access that? We want to say our book is, you know what we'll say? We will say constant data is what? Is request.body, right? So let's just console.log data. So let's just log data. All right. So what we are going to do now is to come to our Postman and send our request. So let's send. Okay, this is get. We are trying to create. So let's create. And you can see we have undefined. So let's do something. Let's say body. We are sending JSON, which is raw. And we are saying name. The name of our sending JSON name. The name of our tool is bootcamp date type. 1.0, and then who is the author? We can say the author is Okeshi. And then if we say send, we are still having undefined, which means something is wrong somewhere. So what do we want to do? We may want to go to the documentation. Anyways, what we are going to do is to say we want to access JSON body. We want to access JSON body. And Express already handles that for us. Express.js already handles that for us. What we are going to just see is that in our index file, before defining our route, we are going to say app.use express.json. App.use express.json. So this will allow us to access JSON. It will allow us to access JSON data. So let's say returns middleware that only passes JSON and only looks for requests where content type header matches the type option. So let's come back and let's just send. And as you can see, we are now having our what's it called? Our data, which is the data we are sending to this request. Are we still connected? Is everyone getting me? All right. So what we are going to do is to say our new book is okay. Our new book is going to do some things here. Let me just do this. Let me say constant new book is what? Is an object where the ID will be for and every other thing from data. So what I'm doing here is to structure what we have here and put it inside this place. Again, I'll be logging this new book so you can see what it looks like. So it won't look like I'm performing magic. So let me just send. And as you can see, I have ID for name is and author is Okeshi. Does everyone get that? Is anyone lost at this point? So what I did here is okay, Daniel.
Yeah, please go one more time.
Okay, so what I did here is to destructure what is inside this data to this object. So this data has name and it has auto. So using these three dots means I'm destructuring everything. So what I'm doing there is just to add everything inside this data to this object. Just like combining what I have in this data to what I'm defining in this object. Structuring. Let me look for a better way to explain that. So the structuring. So the structuring is the syntax for extracting values from an object property and assigning them to a variable. So I'm extracting value. I'm extracting values from inside variable data and putting it inside this place. So now that we have, sorry, Daniel, do you get that?
Please, my question is, I need to see like the place where you put Shay, okay, Shay as the author. I understand that you are that you're already like inserting it back, but I need to see like where you fixed it.
So this is where I added it. I added Okeshi as the auto, and the name is Bootcamp Dive. I'm adding this as a body data for my request. Let me just call it Control X. This was what we have, right? This is how we've been sending the request. So we want to send data with this post request. Like I said, a post request is always used to create something, to create a resource in our backend. And when you are trying to create something, you want to pass in the data that you use to create that thing, right? So what we are doing here, we want to send raw JSON. We want to send raw JSON. And here is our JSON. The name is Bootcamp with Dive 1.0 and the author is Okeshi. Do you get that? All right, so back to what we are doing here. I'm structuring what we have here to new book and saying, let me just remove this previous one and saying books.push new book, right? And again, yes, new book. And again, here I want to return the book as new book. Yes, Shay, our author.
uh, I have a question about the data.
About this,
Yes, I understand
all
how
right.
how you're adding the new data to the existing new book. I understand that one. But what I don't understand is how you added it from the Postman. Like, did you add that data from Postman, or is it coming from that
Yes,
my name?
the data is coming from Postman in our body, in the body of our request. Are you getting me? In the body of our request. Just like I explained in our last class, every request has an header and the body. So we are
Okay,
sending
okay,
it as part of the body of our request. And
okay.
in our code, we are doing what? We are getting the body. So request.body will give us the data we got from Postman, and we are putting it inside data, inside constant data rather.
All right,
Do you get
I
that?
understand. Yes, I understand now.
All right, thank you, author. So now we have create book, we have adding book we are getting from our payload. So what I'm going to do is just come here and send. So we have okay, here. Let me just come here. As you can see, we now have okay, here as part of our as part of our authors, and we have the name of the book, which is Bootcamp, with Dive 1.0. Let's hit this book endpoint again, and yes, we have another. We have another. We have another. Let's just hit this one again. You now notice that we have two of these guys, and the annoying part is that we now have two items with ID 4. So this one is ID 4 and this one is ID 4, right? Is that a problem? Is this something we should be worried about? So yes, it's something we should be worried about. Can someone tell us how we can sort this problem? This is where it is coming from. We have ID 4 here. So regardless of the data, we have ID 4. How can we solve that? Can anyone help us out?
Try using a for loop.
A for loop, right? A for loop, right?
Yes.
Okay, how do we go about that?
So you can define the new book.
Yes, just like we have here, new book.
Yeah, like inside the for loop. So like
I'm not sure I understand that.
sorry, give me a minute to get my thoughts together.
All right. So while you are doing that, okay, Sheyi, you can help us out. You know this is your book and you want everything to be, you have to be sure everything is okay.
Okay. Um. I think you can once you've added that book, you can run a check through the response. Like once, like I think from what I'm saying here, anytime this create book runs, this new book will be added to it. So I'm
Yes.
thinking that there's a way if you could run through the data to check if there's a duplicate or if there's a replication of the data. I think that's where that for loop may come in to check if there's a duplicated one of the data you just added and not push it all. That's what I was thinking.
Okay, so here we have two problems. First problem is that we have two books. So let's just restart our server. So let me see. And yes, we have three books here, right? So let me create a new book. Come back. I have book with ID 4, name is Bootcamp with Dive 1.0, and author is Okeshi. Let me come back here and say, let me say Bootcamp with Dive Backend 1.0, and then the author can be Anna Daniel. Right, if I send this request, it's successful. But coming back here, let's make this request again. Now I have 3, 4, 4. So that's the first problem, and this is what we are trying to sort now. Okay, Christiana.
Okay, I think that, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I think instead when you running the create book function, you can just add a condition to check if the book already exists. So if it exists, you should send a message that the book already exists to avoid duplicates. If not, then you can add the book to the data.
All right, so that solves our second question. We are checking if the book already exists. However, it doesn't solve this first one, which is this ID 4. If I come here, if you check this one now, Bootcamp with Dive 1.0 and Bootcamp with that Dive Backend 1.0, these are not the same books, right? So this is not the problem. The problem is with the ID. Who is helping us out?
So is there no way that we can put the ID outside of the code? We are hard coding the ID.
Yes, I don't want us to hard code it. The system should be able to know the appropriate ID to assign to the book. So how do we do that?
Okay, can we like get the ID of the last book?
All right. So if you say we should get the ID of the last book, you can say, okay, after getting the ID of the last book, what happens?
And then when we want to create a new book, we would set the ID as like +1.
All right. So what you said we should do is to say get the ID of the last book. Get the ID of the last book. You know what? That's a very long process. What we are going to do is to get the length of the books in this ID, in this array. So presently we have 3. And if I say books.length, I should have 3. Remember, I said this is books. Remember, I said index starts from 0, which makes this 0, 1, 2. However, if you're trying to get the length doesn't start from 0. It counts from 1 to 3. So this is different from trying to do this. Are you getting me? So length will give me the actual length of what I have in the book. So let's come. And we are saying what? We want to get the length of what we have +1. So let's come here, create book. First of all, we want to get our books. We have 3. And then we want to create a book. Come back here. You can see we have 4 here. We want to come back here again. Click on this create book again. And you can see we are already having 5 here. Come back here again. Click on create book. We have 5. Let's create another one to make it 6. Here we have 6. And here we have 6. So now our first problem is sorted. Right. Now we want to face the second problem, which is the book, which is this one, is now appearing 3 times. What do we want to do? We want to make sure that one book only exists once. Right? And how do we do that? How do we do that? We want to say, all right. So I said I destructured this admin. Let me show you guys something. I can as well come here and say, I have data. I can say constant. Okay. I can say constant something. Is what? It's data, right? And if you don't forget, my data is what I have here, name and the author, which means my data is an object of name and author. So I can come here and say name author. Are you getting it? Which means I can now use the name or author anywhere I want to use it. So let me just come here and say console.log name, right? And come back to my Postman, try create a book. And as you can see, I have the name here. So I'm destructuring name from variable data. Do you get that? Let me come again. Because my data is an object of name. Don't forget my data, which is what we got here. It's an object of what we are getting from the request body. And in the request body, we have the name and the author. In JavaScript, you can destructure an object and say, okay, inside this object, I need just the name, right? We get that. All right, let me do it in a way we all understand. Let me do it. We'll come back to this destructuring. Okay, Daniel.
Sir, sorry, I've not seen a way of naming variable like this, like you putting name and author in this curly braces. Like, is it a function, or like even if you want to define an object directly, is it like another way of defining it like that?
All right, I'll come back to that, but we can just proceed with the way we all understand. So what we can do is to say constant name, which is our book name, is what? Data.name, right? Right. This thing I just did here is the same thing as me saying constant name is data. So what I'm doing here is to get name from data. Is to get name from data. So let me just remove that. We'll come back to that. And what we want to do is to check if the name already exists. So we want to do book, constant book. Let's say existing book is what is books. That's fine. This will accept a callback function, right? That will accept book. That will have access to book, which is the current iteration. Don't forget, I told you I talked about when you are looking through, when you have a method that is looking through an array, you have access to each of the objects, each of the items in the array. So it is the one that meets our condition that this thing will return to us. Right. So what we can do is say we want book dot name, where book dot name is our name. Are you getting me? It means any book that meets this condition is what we'll have as our existing book. Are you getting me? So any book where the name is the name we got from our request is the book that meets our condition, and it's the book to assign to this variable. So what we can do here is to say if existing book is not equal to null, is not equals to null, right? We want to return, we want to say response or rest dot status correct status. Yes, this will receive a status code. And let's come back to our images. Let's come back to our images. So I said we can have something. So here we want to say the book already exists. We want to let the user know already exists, right? What is the best status code we can use for that? Can someone tell us? From what we have here, what is the best status code we can use for that?
Sorry for what?
So we are trying to let the user know that there's already an existing book with this name, right? What is the best status code we can use for that request? This status code here. From what I've explained so far. All right, Daniel.
I think 208.
208 is what already reported. All right, I said when you are using the 200 series, it means the request is successful. in this case, the creation request is not successful. We are trying to let the user know that the name is already existing in our system. You should try changing the name and try the request again. So what do you think the actual, what do you think, what status code do you think is the best for what we are trying to do? Okay, Shay.
409.
409, which is conflict. Yes, we can use 409, but I would say we should go for 400, which is a bad request. Give me a moment, please. Let me check something about this 409. All right, so yes, we can go for 409. So yes, let's just come there and say our status code should be 409, and then we want to say, just like we have responses here, we want to say .send response, and then we'll update our response. We say success is false. What's the message? The message will be book. All right, book name already exists. Right? Are we sending any data? We are most likely not sending any data for a failed request. We get that. So if the book is not null, which means if we have a book actually, we are returning a response. This status code 409, which means conflict. All right, so which means conflict. And we are sending this response. Success is false, and the message is book. So book already exists. So let's come back to our payload. Create the first book already exists. Well, let's try checking undefined. Let's go to undefined. All right, so what I can just do is just say if existing book. So if existing book means if there's something inside this existing book. Are you getting me? If it is null or undefined, that means this condition will be false. So if existing book, which means if there's something inside existing book, it should give us that error. So let's just send. On the first request, it will be successful. Are you getting me? But on the second request, we have success is false, and the message is bootcamp with type something already exists. We get that. And then after doing that, we want to continue with our logic. So what I just did here is what we call early return. Early return, which means if you know something is wrong with your implement, with your logic, if something is not right, if you want to break something, instead of saying instead of me saying if not true, which means if there's nothing inside group, if there's nothing inside existing group, we want to do this, right? And if there's something, we want to do this. This will make our code not readable, right? Is it not confusing the way you are looking at it now? So instead of having this if else, if else, you can just say if, and that's early return, if existing. So that means if there's something inside the existing, should do this. And yes, we can now remove this guy. Why? Because after running this send, request the send, every other thing after that logic is not going to run again. So we see if we can just say return response of send if I'm correct. Yes. So after every return statement, no other logic is going to run. If you have a return statement inside a function, and after your return statement, you have other function, it's not going to run. Once your function already returns what it is supposed to return, then we continue with our logic, which is to create the book. New book is this, books.push, and that. Do we all understand that? Are we all on the same page? All right. So what I did here, I said earlier that what I just did here is very synonymous to this. So what I'm doing is to get the name from data. Did we get that? I'm getting name. I'm able to access name. I'm able to destructure name from data. Why? Because name is actually inside data. So if I'm saying names, I'll get an error. Let me just come here. Let me just come here and say console.log names. So if I come here and running my requests, you can see I'm already even getting an error. Name is not defined. So. Let me come here. All right, you can see my names, which is what I'm logging here, is undefined. Let's ignore this error. The error is because I commented this out. So the name is undefined. However, for names, it is saying undefined as well. Why? Because we don't have names inside data. We only have name, which means you can only access name. If I remove this, if I remove the F and then yes, after saving, coming here, and I have everything still working. Do we get that? If I want to access the author as well, I can just say author. Here, I can only access things that are inside this data. Do we all understand that? I'm saying only Daniel. All right, Daniel.
Okay. Can we access our ID too?
So because ID is not inside this data, you can't access it. Don't forget the data is what is coming from our request body. And in our request body, we are not sending ID. We are sending only the name and the author. Author rather. Do you get that? All right. So let me just leave this like this. So anyone looking at that will know that's the same thing. So once you see this, you should know this is what it means. All right, so that is that about creating. Now that we can create our books dynamically, we can also remove these 3 books that we have here. So whenever our server restarts, we have an empty list, an empty array of books. Right. So yes, coming back here, first of all, I want to get books. I want to get books. You can see now I have an empty array of books, which means I don't have books in my system yet. So let me create our first book. You can see the ID here is 1, which means that's our first book. Let me send this request again. We have just 1. We get that. So what I want to do now is to, let's create another book. Let's just change this to 2.0. Let's see, send the requests. Now we have ID2, name is something 2.0, and then the author is midway. Again, let's get our books. Now we have 2 books, right? So one other thing I want us to do is to get one single book. So we want to get just this book, not all the books, right? We want to get just this one. Just this one. And how do we go about that? That means we have to create another endpoint. Let's just, so I didn't save this one. Let me see. Yes. Before doing that, you notice that we are repeating our base URL here. We are repeating our base URL here. And what we can just do is to create an environment for it. So let's say you want to say our type local environment, and inside each environment we can add variables. So we want to add our base URL. We call this the base URL. So we want to add our base URL. So what we are going to do is to say base URL. Sorry, no, it's to say base URL. And what's the value? This and this. Yes, so you are saving. So what we can do here in our collection, coming back to our collection, we can say, come to this place, you want to select type local environment, which is the environment you just created, and then you want to replace this with base URL. You want to replace this with, sorry, you want to replace this with base URL. So let's send. All right, something seems not working. All right, yes. Okay. So I added one other calling basis there, which is not supposed to be there. So yes, the base URL and the endpoint. So what we can do, if you are, maybe you posted your project live, you can just change the current URL to something like HTTPS Backend Africa. So instead of you having to go through all your endpoints, all your collections, and trying to change everything one by one, you can just change it from the environment. Do we understand that? We all understand that. Am I communicating? Are we all still connected? Okay, Daniel.
Maybe please you will come again about the environment, like just maybe one more time.
All right. So in every system you are building, you can have your local environment or your production environment. So here in this environment tab, you can create different environments, right? And what we did was to click here, you have a new environment. And after creating the environment, why is the delete environment taking so long? Anyways, let me come here. So this is the environment we created, and inside this environment we added a variable. So this is our variable key, this URL, and then we added the value, the initial value and the current value. Are you getting me? Which means we want to be able to access this variable, just like we have variable in our code. We want to be able to access this in our collections, in our requests. So what we did here is to switch to this environment. You can see the new environment I created here is there. So to switch to this environment where we have access to this base URL. So we can use this URL here by adding curly braces, 2 curly braces, and then the variable name, right? then send your request. It is going. So let's say you hosted your system, your backend in a live server where you have a different domain, you have a different place URL. You can just update it here instead of having to go through all your requests and doing that. Do you understand that? All right, so let's continue with our coding. Now we have get books. Our get books is getting us all the books. All right, what we want to do is to do what? Let's just duplicate this. And then we want to say get single. Get single book. And when getting single book, we want to, firstly, we are getting, so which means our request must be a get request. And get requests don't have body. They don't have body. They have params, that's query params and path variables. So, and how do we access path variables? How do we define path variables in Postman? You can say books /2. So this books /2 means that I'm trying to get the book with ID 2. Are you getting me? If I send this request, I should have a 404 error. Yes. Let me save this. All right, sending this request, I should have a 404 not found error. Why? Because we've not defined that route. Just like I said, if you're trying to get, so this is the standard practice. You're trying to get a single book. You should use books / the ID of what you are trying to get. So let me just do it / the ID. I'm trying to enlarge my distance so we can see it well. So sorry, can everyone still hear me? All right, so we can say books / then the ID. So here inside the path variable, so this thing is a path variable, this ID is a path variable. It's a path variable. There's query params and there's path variable. So the path variable is always like it's the same thing as the path. While a query params is always something like this. Author is named to it. So here we are using path variable. So yes, path variable. And which ID are we trying to get? We're trying to get it. So let's just say. All right, so you can see my books and then the ID is still cannot get book /still books /still. We got that right. Okay, so how do we get our book? Again, we'll go to our what's it called? We'll go to our controller and our route. Go to our controller and our route. And just like I have in my Postman, I want to say router.get again this route and then / the column and the ID, which means this is also expecting a path variable of the ID, and then we want to see controller.get by ID. This function doesn't exist yet. You can see I'm even already getting an error. Get book by ID. So what do? We want to create this function inside our controller. So I'm going to come here and say constant get by ID is a callback function, right, which has access to the request and the response. So again, we are exporting this guy as well. So we just come here and do this. So how do we find the book we want to get? How do we find the book we want to get? How do we even access the ID to begin with? How do we access the ID to begin with? What we are going to do is to say constant book ID is what request dot params dot ID. Request dot params dot ID. And let's just console.log this. Or let's just say response.send. Let's just send the book ID we got. So let's come to our Postman, send the request. Now we have to, which means we have access to what we are passing in here. We change to 6. We have 6. We change to 1. We have 1. Right? So yes, we're trying to get here. Let's just. Now, how do we find our book? How we can find our book is by saying, just like we did here. Just like we did here. Let me copy this, put it here. I don't even need to copy this. Let me say constant book is what? Book dot find, right? Also, we have access to the book instance. Let me change this to BK book. Why? Because I already have variable book here and I don't want them to be conflicting. So BK, which is our book, the current iteration of the book, if bk.id is book ID. All right, it's passing book ID. Because this book ID may be coming as a string and we don't want it. And the one in the ID here is an integer. If you can remember somewhere here, this will give us an integer. It's an integer. And don't forget this 3 equal to sign, also check for the type as well. So we also want to convert this to an integer. That is why we have pass int here. So again, it is the book that matches this condition that will be here. So what we want to say is that if not book, if we don't have a book, if not book, right, we want our response just like we have here. Book not found. Book not found. And then here we want to say response and status is what? What status code are we using? Can someone give us that? What status code are we using? What status code are we using? Book not found.
Not found.
404.
We are using 404. So yes, 404 and then dot send response. So let me come, okay, book not found, yes. And then what if we have a book? We are saying our response. Our response, this should be true. And then we can say our message should be book retrieved. And then data will be book. Yes. Be an object, and inside the object we have book. So again, we can say response.send response. Yes. So let's come to this place. Send. Okay, I think we have an error somewhere. So let's check. Let's check what we have in our console. It's saying cannot set headers after you set clients. So let's see. All right, so let's check the request again. So our request is working, but I'm getting an error. All right, so the problem is that we are sending here, but I'm not returning. If you can remember, did return here, and I told you anything after the return statement will not run. So here I'm getting an error that cannot set headers after they are set to clients, after they are sent. Yes, after they are sent to clients, which means we've already sent, sorry, somewhere here. We've already sent our request to the client, and again, we are trying to send again, which we set header. So what we are going to do is to say return. So wherever you have a return statement, everything after that statement is not going to run. So let's go. Let's go. And yes, we still have our server running. It's 404, not found. That's found. So let's try creating a book. We've created the first book. Let's try getting books. We've gotten our books, which is an array of books, because we have just one. We are getting just one. And then let's get a single book. So we are still getting 404 not found. And someone tell us why we are getting that. And someone tell us why we are getting that. All right, Shady. Can you please tell us why we are getting 404 not found?
Have you set the parameter to the number that you want to?
Yes, so we don't have any book with ID 3 in our system. That is why we are getting 404. If you check here, we have just one book, which is 1. So we'd have to change the ID to the one that exists, which is 1. And you can see we have our book here.
All right.
Am I communicating with someone? I hope we are all enjoying. I hope we are all enjoying this class. All right, so we've been able to create book. All right, so create book is not supposed to return 200. If you remember from our status code, we said, so let me put it this way. Create book is not supposed to give us 200. It is supposed to give us something in the 200 series. Can someone tell us what status code that is? What status code we are supposed to get?
201.
201. Thank you for that. We are supposed to get 201, which is created. So we are somewhere here. Create book. We are saying response and status. It's 201, which is created. So let's create another book and say 201. Okay, because we restarted our server, let's just create this first one first. Yes, we have the first book, and then the second book can now be 201 status code. Follow. Yes, and then send. You can see now we have 201 created, which means a new resource is created successfully. Let's come back here and get. We have our endpoint. We have our books, right? Now we've worked with get request, we've worked with post request. I want us to work with I want us to work with put. No, not put. Is it put? I want us to work with patch and delete. I want us to work with patch and delete. So let's say we have two books here. Maybe Fola wakes up tomorrow now and say, okay, I want to change the title. I want to change the name of this my book to something else. We'll be using a patch request for that. So how do we go about that? Again, so all the endpoints I'm creating here, the standard practice, if you are trying to get a single resource, you use the base URL and then the ID. To create, you use the base URL, the same URL, just the base URL for the resources, for the resource. And then to patch, that's to update. Let me save this one. All right. It just appeared to me that it's 9 already. So let's just have the patch request and we'll be good for today. Unless you guys want me to continue, but all right. So what we are doing here is to patch. All right.
Sorry. So I really want to know the difference between put and patch anyways.
All right. A put request is it will create the resource if it doesn't exist. Are you getting me? It will create it if it doesn't exist.
Okay.
And for patch request, it will only update it. So a put request updates existing resource with new data. It replaces the entire resource or creates it if it doesn't exist. So it is going to replace everything. However, for patch, it is a partial update. Are you getting me? So for this thing, we want to do,
thank you.
Using a patch request. So then you just come here. I have to get book by ID. So what I can do here is to say update, right? Update, and yes, we are going to have access to our book ID. Let me come back to my Postman. Let me show you what this looks like. So I'm going to duplicate this. All right, so I'm going to change the name to update book. And it will still be the same endpoints to get the book. We are just going to change the method to patch. And don't forget, a patch request can accept. A patch request can accept a body JSON, body data. So what we want to change is just the name. So we can just say new name for last book, right? And then let's save. So this is what our patch request looks like. Wow. All right, this is how our patch request looks like. The base URL for the resource and then the ID. Okay. Or is it because it's 9 o'clock? Let's try again. So like I said, this is what a patch request looks like. Just like the guest request for getting a single resource, we are patching, we are updating this single resource as well. The patch request is going to accept, it's going to receive data, the fresh data you want to update it to in the body. So let's just come to this book. We have update book. Don't forget to have access to the ID here. And we have book. Also, if the book is not found, it's going to return 404. Are you getting me? Now, if the book is found, what we want to do is to see let's change this thing to a let's. Oh yes. Let's book with something. So we can say book is what? structure everything inside book, right? And then destructure everything inside data. And I don't think we have the data yet, so we are going to bring it from somewhere here, where we are saying the data is what we have from our body. So yes. So destructure everything inside here, just put it inside. So what I'm doing here is that I'm destructuring everything inside book, put it inside book, and then destructure everything inside data, put it inside book as well. So what will happen is that if there's something that is already here, the one here will overwrite it. So if there's already name in this book and it is already destructured, and there's name here as well, it will override the one inside book. So now we have a new book. Let me just come back here and see, change this to a constant. Constant new book. So as not to confuse us. New book is the structured data and book. And we want to update what we have. We want to update the book on our array. How do we do that? Sorry, give me a moment. First of all, we want to get the index of this our previous book, which you see constant book index is what? Books dot find index, and we are finding index of correct. Now that we have the index, we want to say books book index is what? New book. Yes, and at the end of the day, after updating our book, we want to say new book. We understand that. Again, let me come again. We are getting the book ID, get the book from the list of books we already have. If the book doesn't exist, we want to return 404 to the user. And then if the book exists, that means the rest of this code will run. So we are getting the data from the request body, create a new book, assign everything inside that previous book to the new book, assign everything from our payload, that's the body payload, to the new book as well. So if there's any conflict, this one under will override the one at the top. And then what we want to do is to get the index of the book from the list of our books. Let me come again. We are trying to get the index of the book, which is this current book, from the list of our books. And then we are overwriting the book by saying books index. This thing I'm doing here is saying, okay, in index 2, if the book's index is 2, in index 2, put this book as the book that will be there. And then we are returning our response to the user. So again, we are exporting this function. Exporting the function. And in our route, just like we have for the get route, we are saying controller dot update book. You get that? So let me just come to, let's start afresh. We don't have any book. Okay, we also don't have the book here. Now let's create a book. We have for last book. Let's say so creating a new book, and I have my second book here. So let me get my books again. Getting my books, I have 1, 2, and single book. Get a single book. I have the first book. Let me change this to 2. I have the second book, and then I want to update the book. Which book am I trying to update? I'm trying to update the second one. Don't forget, my second book has title of Dive Backend Training. So I'm trying to update the name. That's the name of the book. To new name. But let's just say Dive Backend Training. And then in brackets updated. So we know it has been updated. So let's send how this works. Cannot patch. So what I did here, I'm supposed to change this to patch. So let me send all our create request again. Create this. Create this. Let's get. All right. So let's just update the second one. Again, another error. Object is not a function. Something. Find text. All right. I think our find index is supposed to receive. Our find index is supposed to receive a callback. Correct. Yes, it's supposed to receive a callback. So what I'm going to do here is to say every test ID should be bigger. Yes, where book.id, which is this ID. ID. Yes. I think that should work. So let's check again. Create first book. Create second book. Let's get our page. And let's try updating again. Yes, our second book has been updated. So let's come back and get our second book, our books rather. You can see we now have updated in our second book. We all understand that. All right, so